The good news out of this is that we should see a decentralization of food distribution and food processing. Big JBSs of the world and the Tysons and probably Smithfields. Farmers are going to start going more to regional production because they're going to get higher prices for their animals than they will from the big houses. And when people are starving, they're going to probably forget that they're eating genetically modified food, even though obviously avoid it if you can, but you're not going to be able to feed 8 billion people on organic crops.
Bitcoin heavily fluctuated after rumors claiming Amazon would accept cryptocurrency. There were also rumors that Amazon was in the process of making its own cryptocurrency. Amazon dismissed both of these rumors, but would you have been in a position to profit from their decision if it were true? I was able to profit myself because I learned to trade through Trade Genius Academy on the crypto side. I took part in various courses, personal coaching, chat rooms, Signals trading tool. That's where I look for price signals in cryptocurrency from Bob Kudla at TradeGeniusAcademy.com, who also offers other signature trading tools for stocks, exchange-traded funds, binary options, and commodities. All you need is an internet connection to get started. Interact with Trade Genius community, fellow traders, and certified Trade Genius trades, alongside professionals who generate revenue for themselves in the stock market every single day. Live buy and sell alerts text to your phone, built for both new and experienced traders. Check out the Trade Genius Academy by going to TradeGeniusAcademy.com or click on the link in the description box to save 40% off all non-bundled items. Use the promo code SUMMER. And now on with the video. Good afternoon, everyone. Today, I have with me Bob Kudla, TradeGeniusAcademy.com. We want to talk about the cascading effects of Southern Hemisphere producers such as Brazil, South Africa, Australia, that are now ceasing their exports or reducing their exports. Now, what type of onward effect would this have, as China is still in the massive flood stage, even worse than last year? And they're going to be on the world market looking for an enormous amount of soy, corn, and wheat. Now, the American wheat crop is down 70%. That's right, 70, not 17, 70%. So when China's out looking for the swing producer that would usually provide them with the extra, Argentina's offline, Brazil's offline, not going to be able to export United States. So we get into this cascade. And these are the major producers. But when we swing down to South Africa, for an example, they're major exporters to other countries like Botswana, Namibia, and Mauritius. So you need to then ask Inter-Africa, where does it go from here? Because I personally feel this is the year that it rolls over. This is the year that the world understands the grand solar minimum, the food reduction. And here's the thing, if it stays at this level, we're going to be at the break even or maybe a little less for this year. We still have carryover stocks globally, but those will be eaten into. And then ask yourself the question, how many years can we eat into the carryover stocks before what we grow is what we get on the globe? And that's what we wanted to talk about today. So, Bob, I'm really happy you're joining me because I wanted to get some of your expertise. So how do you feel things are intertwining around the planet in terms of shortages?
So from a macro standpoint, we have right now, the monthly global surface temperature anomaly is that we're trending colder than the last 5 years. You know, one of the things that people don't realize when they look at global warming and global cooling is that they just look at the land and they forget the ocean moderate and delay onsets of the primary trend. And now that we've had, I think we're going into the third year of a La Nina event in the Pacific. Also, people don't realize it because they don't name it this, but there's actually a La Nina kind of event happening in the Atlantic right now, i.e. you have cooling in spots that usually when they warm, cause the temperature on the lands to rise over time. They're now both synchronized to cold. And these are long duration kind of events. And so now that you have this situation happening, is that you could see how the United States looks this year is kind of how it looks if you get back to the 15th and 16th century with the modern minimum, with more intensity. So you're going to see the Pacific Northwest be warmer than normal and drier than normal. You're going to see the South wetter and cooler than normal. You're going to see the Northeast cooler than normal. And you're going to see basically the upper Midwest, so I'm talking about the Dakotas North, as colder and drier. And it's going to cause, obviously, the effects that you and I have been talking about for the last 10 years. And in fact, they're already happening. So you and I no longer have to say this is coming. It's here already. It's happening. We're seeing it already in the pricing. The prices aren't going up because of Biden administration monetary policy. Pricing's going up because there's not as much food as there are people who want to buy it or need to buy it. And so you're starting to get these spot shortages. And here's one that's really interesting. The oat crop is down 14% for the year.
That's a canary in the coal mine. Oats are incredibly sensitive to climate change in terms of precipitation or temperature in their growth maximum optimum.
Yeah, and so NASA is actually reporting, believe it or not, reporting data that's opposite of what the global warming people want you to believe. These trends are going to intensify. So you have basically the Pacific Northwest wheat crop. It may revert back to prairie up there unless they start intensive irrigation. Their winter wheat is not going to produce, the spring wheat, whatever they call it, because they may not get the rains that they expect. It's going to be really interesting to see how these things change. Look how dry Nebraska has been this year. The only reason why the corn is doing well there is because of heavy irrigation. And the Dakotas and Minnesota have been dry. The Northeast is going to freeze early this year. We see it. You look over in Germany, and you and I talked about, like, you had an incredible interview that you did. I forget with whom. Maybe it was just one of your own podcasts. It must have been 4 or 5 years ago, where you showed the river valleys in Europe that are going to suffer immense flooding. And we're starting to see those river valleys now start taking those hits. And so you're going to start seeing, why are these river valleys now? Because that's where the low pressure systems are going to start to form. So, Northeast US, Western Europe, they're mirrors of each other. And then Northwest Pacific, Northeast Asia are mirrors of each other. You just watch to see what's happening, hot and dry Japan. Then areas that we knew nothing about really in the 15th and 16th century is Central and South America, and they weren't keeping temperature records till probably maybe the mid 1600s. And they weren't in the growing regions of Brazil. Those people were, along the coast primarily. Is that you have this weather anomalies that are the 600 years that people have lived in Brazil. It hasn't snowed where people are getting snow now.
Bob, can you stop for a second? That was a blizzard. If you watch the footage from that, the wind was blowing at 50 miles an hour, bringing that, half a foot of snow in there at blizzard conditions. And then they never get snow there, and they had a blizzard. So it's so far off the hook of even that having a blizzard in a tropical area, something's very amiss.
The reason why it's important for your listeners to understand is that Argentina is now providing corn to Brazil. So they're going offline as an export engine for the world. At the same time, China is ramping up their imports because they are falling short of their agricultural production as well. And now we have this situation where with this COVID, we don't have enough ships or the ports aren't open. And China's locking down again, Dave. They're locking down. And what people don't realize, I'll shift gears just a second, but the people don't realize that Yangtze Valley is where the city that Apple has all their production out of is downstream of those dams. Hubei province is where all our pharmaceuticals come from. So this is becoming a bigger and bigger and bigger deal. I think 2021 is the year of, why is this costing me too much? 2022 might be the year of, I wish I would have bought a couple bags of rice and started my garden kind of a year. I'm walking around grocery stores now, and I live in areas of plenty, and the grocery store shelves are never full. I went into Costco, and even there, they were out of water, okay, and they were out of certain cuts of beef. So, I asked the question. I'm like, hey, you guys, how do you guys get this? Hey, stuff comes in when it comes in. I mean, so the supply chains are breaking down. So what that's going to lead to is higher and higher costs. The good news out of this is that we should see a decentralization of food distribution and food processing. Big JBSs of the world and the Tysons and probably Smithfields. Farmers are going to start going more to regional production because they're going to get higher prices for their animals than they will from the big houses who are going to try to play the game of buy cheap. But it's going to be a transition. I know the farmers that I follow are all ramping up herds of beef where areas that they don't normally grow them because the prices are so lucrative now. The bad news is they're not selling their corn and wheat anymore. They're holding on to their grain production to feed their own animals. So it's going to be a really interesting environment going forward.
And the Costco over here, I was in the other day, they're out of paper plates, paper cups, that sort of, one-time usage thing, completely bare, not a one in the store anywhere. I did quite a bit of study on China because I lived there and I knew a few of the areas, traveled through a bit. And some of the people that have left there but were working online with companies there, the gates have suddenly shut in China. One guy, he was a manager, ran like a regional area of an online teaching school. And China doesn't want anybody outside the Chinese system talking into their citizens. So the entire online teaching and online vocation and online training sector of that entire country, which is a $1 billion industry, completely firewalled off now. They're giving inside China free education to the children via the state-sponsored online training programs. No foreigners allowed, no foreign investment, no foreign intervention, nothing, complete firewall within a month. So that whole thing, an entire industry gone there. So it does seem that China is pulling up the gates. And the floods this year are worse than last year, because last year it was in the upper Yangtze. And, you got to divide the areas into two areas. So the upper Yangtze is right at the edge where that Three Gorges Dam is, going back toward Chongqing and further up into the, base of the Himalayas where that comes out there. Flood in that entire floodplain and river valley system all the way to the Three Gorges Dam. But then they had the Three Gorges Dam full open. And then it trickled down to those other dams, and they were able to slough off a bunch of the water before it hit the areas that it is now. But this year, the floods are directly over the crop growing zone. And when they sloughed off the water, they sloughed it off into the crop growing zone in the heartland of the heartland. I mean, the floods this year are so much more devastating than last in terms of showing the fragility of our most modern infrastructure, on how that tunnel was flooded so fast and all those cars were trapped down there. So covered, so inundated, all encompassing. Everywhere you look, systems are breaking down, infrastructure is breaking down, and our way of life is being reset at the same time in conjunction with all of these things that we're seeing. I would just call it an amplification of everything moving forward. But South Africa is the canary in the coal mine, I do believe. So is the oats. The oats in South Africa, if you don't see that, are two major factors going, whoa, something has drastically changed. Maybe you need a bigger microscope.
Well, there's reports out of India that the Chinese rainfall totals are in the 1,000-year range.
Yeah, of course, that would be expected. Fully expected.
Right. This is hitting the some of the phases and cycles that we've been talking about. When you have those La Niñas happening in the Eastern Pacific, all that heat is now bottled up in the South China Sea and in the Indian Ocean. And so China's just going to get hit with wave after wave after wave of super typhoons. And northern China is getting hit right now. Normally, they both don't get hit at the same time, but they are.
Yeah, and then switching over to Europe, you saw the 1.5 foot of snow already hitting up into the Alps there. Zermatt, Saas-Fee, Passo, Celevo in Italy. already receiving at least 1.1 feet, and they're predicting even more snow for the next 48 hours. And ski resorts are super excited because they know they're going to be opening early this year. You know, you were pinpointing some of those areas in Europe with mega floods. I was looking at a history book because those same areas were the same areas that had flooded during the Maunder minimum and the Sporter minimum, both. They did it twice already previously in major grand solar minimums. I'm wondering 3 times would be a third time as a charm. So all I looked for, the highest flood mark in Germany, and it pegged right in those same exact towns in the northwest of Germany, the same exact areas that flooded in the same exact time frame of those major floods down in southern France and Italy in that basin area there, Torino, etc., going west over into parts of France. It's not woo-woo magic. It's looking into a history book and seeing the repeating cycles and knowing the cycles are repeating, so you can start to pick out some of the same events in terms of floods. And you look and say, well, what kind of infrastructure, agricultural grow zones, manufacturing might be in these same areas? And you go, well, that's going to start to get hit. Now, what's the knock-on effect?
So, we're hitting a lot of cycles here. We're hitting the weather cycles. We're hitting the winter cycle of the economics. Politics is breaking down, and we have an environment where, I call it peak centralization. You're going to see a breakdown of ability of what I would call the federalized government to really help their people. And it's going to break down. It's going to get more and more local, which we talked about that. Ironically, these things should happen. You should have shorter supply lines, and you should have better interconnection so that one big failure. I'm not going to pick on Taiwan because I want them to be successful, but all the chip manufacturers in the world are relying on Taiwanese fabricators for all our electronics and all of our car chips. And now it's affecting worldwide production of automobiles and electronics. All of our pharmaceutical precursors, we've outsourced to China. And that river, the Yangtze River, it's flooding right now. And if they flood to a point where people can't get to work and they decide to lock down again, well, it puts the pharmaceutical at risk for the entire world. Thomas Friedman said the world is flat. Well, the world is getting bumpy again. And that alone will raise costs. China and American Federal Reserve policy has caused a deflation that people don't see. Because you say, but Bob, prices have gone up every year. Correct. However, if China didn't exist and the Federal Reserve buying assets didn't exist and buying down interest rates, we've already would have hyperinflated. And now those two are running at the end of their ability to continue that trend. So we're already going to see higher prices. So when you have higher prices and where China can't compete on price, you're going to start seeing manufacturing and production move back closer to the source of the consumer. So you're going to see production moving back into the United States. The problem is we're going to have pain getting from A to B because when A shuts down, B may not be ready again. And that's going to happen with food production. That's going to happen with other economic inputs. And, right now, I have a neighbor across the street who's been waiting weeks, months, I think, even to get windows in. He can't finish his remodel on his home. His house is open to the elements until these windows come in. For my birthday in June, I wanted a great green egg, one of those smokers. And I had to buy the floor model because the guy said, if you want a green egg this year, you better buy what's on my floor. And he showed me his order book. And people have been ordering since March, waiting for their green egg to come in. And that is a U.S. produced product. You just can't get the transportation. And you pick and choose. You're lucky because you don't have slabs where you live. But out here in California, we have slab homes, no basements. And sometimes with earth movement and with the poor construction quality in a lot of these homes that were built in the 80s and early 90s, you have basically what's called slab leaks, where the copper pipe coming into the house from underneath leaks. You can't get the replacement parts, what they're called PEX, plastic, because of what happened in Texas with the winter freezes. It pushed them way behind in production. So one thing after the other, and these things all snowball with each other. You're running into situations where an inconvenience here, an inconvenience there starts becoming more, I'm going to start hoarding now and things of that nature.
Yeah, because PEX is a good one because that's a freeze thaw type of plastic piping that can expand it even if it freezes. We use that in Tennessee here. Everybody's got PEX or is on the PEX bandwagon because the winters are getting cooler here. And in Mississippi as well, a lot of pipes broke down there last year. So Mississippi as well, there's a huge amount of people with miles and miles, tens of miles of PEX pipe order in that can't get filled. And out here, I'll tell you a personal story. I am trying to gravel my driveway, and I have a 1,000-foot gravel driveway. I need to get graveled in. I can't get the guys to come out because they're running so much. They're hauling so much to all these construction sites all over the place. They'd even getting a hauler to come in and drop a 20-ton of rock. All right, I'll just come in and drop it. I'll get a guy with a loader and come and spread it myself. But geez, everything, I don't care if it's just simple as basic rock dropped onto your property at the moment is difficult. There's not enough people working. Everywhere you look, there's a supply chain breakdown. Now there's airplane fuel shortages and they're blaming staff shortages. So I just don't know when it's going to stop. I think we are in the amplification decline phase at the moment. Myself, where at this point, everything's amplifying in the decline, not the solutions. But for me, a solution is getting the parts, components, pieces, and frames or whatever it is for indoor vertical agriculture on your own home. Because your garage, you can turn into a massive grow zone. But bringing it on to the community-based level or the city-based level where, you start to bring in a lot of supplies to revert over to indoor growing as the outdoor mediums are becoming less and less hospitable for whatever plants that you're trying to grow. I mean, wherever there's a decline, there's also an opportunity to take up because, nothing's going to go to zero. And please understand, nothing's going to go to zero. Never has, never will. It's going to rearrange and move. So that's the greatest opportunity in our, lifetimes is figuring out where this transition is going to be, which companies, which industries, what's the biggest human need in the change. So we're going to go from what we understand a stable society, and it's going to shift and rift and shake and bake and crack. But then what do we need the most, and what companies can offer that service during the transition to keep our way of life, our style of life, our comfort of life, continuing at some semblance of normal moving forward. And that's where the value is going to be in those companies.
Yeah. And for me, obviously I look at it from a trader's perspective, and we went back into Mosaic this week. You could buy IPI, and they just had earnings. They're just 18% surprise to the upside on their earnings estimates. And just for the listeners, not so much for you, but when you needed to supercharge a crop to get it to the flowering or the fruiting stage or the heading stage, you got to give it potash. Or if you're worried that your growing season is going to shorten up, you're going to go do it. Or if your land flooded out, you're going to need to put on a topical fertilizer to, re-energize the ground. And so these are stocks. You should have it as a core to your product. And I'm just looking at the charts here while we're talking. Is another one that you probably want to get your hands on over time is a company called the Anderson Company. They grain silos, and they handle transportation, and they also pay a dividend. So that's another stock that you should put into your portfolio to own. There's always an opportunity out there, regardless of what happens in the market. If this market goes down, we're buying volatility. We'll show people how to trade that too. So there's opportunities all the time in the market until they shut the market down, right? So there's always going to be a bull market somewhere. You're not going to be able to feed 8 billion people on organic crops.
No, you certainly aren't. Especially if you take a look at the new updated predicted versus actual on the sunspot count on where we're going with this solar cycle. It's going to peak a little bit faster here, and it's going to be back down again. So if you had followed any of these forecasts about, don't listen to these guys about the food and everything, because this solar cycle is going to be perfect, but even stronger than the last one. So these guys like Bob and Dave talking about the sun affecting the jet streams and cloud cells and shrinking your grow seasons. Well, I think they overlooked the predicted versus actual, because it looks like we're going to be up and down already in 2024 and declining. So they were expecting original, increase the peak of it to be in like 2025, 26 to have a real strong solar cycle. But it looks like we're going to be up and down. And what we're talking about now is going to continue to increase because the more cosmic rays are coming in with this weaker solar cycle, more volcanic eruptions, and you see these wildfires and things, they're going to be blocking sun from the sky. And I think we're just in this feedback loop now of real geologic changes based on the sun's activity and what we're seeing with the economy and the economics on the planet here. So how do we use the tech to our best ability to get us through? And I'll agree, any kind of hybridized seed that can get it, not really GMO, but hybridized seeds, a little bit different. And I just really, the future is kind of an unknown now. We are going to have to take more of our own responsibility moving forward. So these kind of companies that allow you to get machinery parts or what it would be constituents or anything that you can put together from companies that can help us be more localized and get you more self-sufficient, in addition to offering products that can help you get more self-sufficient or a region get more self-sufficient. That's kind of the direction it needs to go, because looking at the solar cycle here, way amiss on the quote unquote experts, but they wouldn't take my solar forecast. Bob, personal story. I tried to submit my forecast for what would be back in 2018. They would not take me because I was not with an institution. How dare you as an independent researcher try to even compete with the experts to put in a forecast? Because I was just going to work with John Casey's numbers and say 75 or below with the average. And here we are, we're going to be right at around that average 75 or below. Walk me through the speed and the transition of everything you're talking about. You have a pretty good timeline. So from now, between food, extreme price rises, and then governments taking action and shipping delays, et cetera, what's your timeline moving forward with this?
Well, we already got double digit this year. I'd expect another double digit next year. Now, where I live, you have, I would call it average pork prices. You can just, blend the shoulders with the loins, whatever. You can usually get things between $1.99 and $3.99. Okay, those prices have moved up $1, so they've already moved up about 30% on average. You catch the occasional deal. Beef prices have doubled. I don't think people have realized that it literally have doubled, and I don't see those coming down anytime soon. But the one I'm watching now that has me a little bit more concerned is chicken prices. So you usually out here in California during the height of the growth of the chickens, you can get a lot of deals for 99 cents, value packs and stuff like that. Now we're at $1.99, and if they do any kind of processing to it at all, you could be up to $3.99 or $4.99 a pound for chicken. That gets expensive for people. So you're starting to see basically the whole meat curve going out. And what we're watching now is coming into our spring. You're going to get basically the South American fall. And I'm starting to watch the prices of the stuff that comes out of New Zealand and out of Chile. We get a lot of our produce that are off season from those areas. And those prices last year have gone up. I see double digit again in food, and that's just food. The other essentials, are probably going to go up because of the shortages now. Companies have figured out they can drop production and make more profit. And that's exactly what they're doing. Shipping companies, boats didn't go away. It's just that they took boats offline. Shipping rates are up 25% again, and they're going to go up another 25% next year. No new boats are coming online for 2 more years. So the whole thing is cycling through. And now we're starting to see surcharges for fuel. Remember, we haven't had those in a long time.
Again, remember that ridiculousness of how the airlines would rake you over the coals for $1 extra buck? I can't wait until they start charging for air on the plane, We're right back to those same days again.
Yeah, it's going to be the trucks, though, are interesting. What you got to watch for is that, believe it or not, Amazon's going to be a canary in the coal mine, because they have built their model on free delivery. And so they have shortages now of products, so they're not selling as much stuff. All the stimulus checks are out, so people aren't just buying stuff willy-nilly. These rent moratoriums will end. I think, this latest one they're trying to pull is going to probably go to the courts and get bounced. And so people are going to lose their ability to spend basically non-essentially. And so Amazon stock's going to go down, and at the same time, food prices are going to go up. So I see consumer retrenchment at double-digit down. At the same time, we're seeing cost of living is going to be double-digit up. And so it's going to be 2022 is going to not be a fun year.
I have a chicken story for you. Believe it or not, since you mentioned chicken, I have a personal chicken story. So I'm in the farm co-op the other day because 7 months ago, I ordered winter peas and I ordered iron peas to do a ground cover crop because we were stripping some of the pine trees off the back field. And I didn't want it to sit there all bare soil through the winter. I wanted to get something on it so it wouldn't erode. 7 months ago, I ordered. And then, you know what? The peas came in just last week. So I went to go pick them up. And as I'm sitting there, the guys were talking about chicken scratch, how expensive it was getting. And these are the guys who buy chicken feed by the ton for their operation. So I talked to them for a quick second. And I heard them talking, going, yeah, I can't believe how much price of chicken scratch has gone up. You know, I was asking, well, how much is it? They're about 20, 25%. But that's on the tonnage. You know, you and me buying a 50-pound bag, I mean, it's up more than that, 40%. But the guys who are buying it by the tons, multi-tons, will get like half a truck by themselves. But my supply chain shortage on the seed side, 7 months to wait for my winter peas to come back. And then hearing the chicken scratch story from the guy. Now, these are producers of chicken in the local area here because, you know, Southeast U.S. produces a lot of chicken, especially Georgia. That is a major, major chicken producer. Another personal story. We went out to see the Georgia Guidestones one time. We drove out. You're going down toward the Atlanta airport, and then you head east down many a highway, about 2.5 hours, way out in the countryside. But that whole entire 2-hour journey going out 2.5 hours to go to the Georgia Guidestones way out there, it's all chicken farms. As far as you go, the whole 2.5 hours or whatever was chicken farm, chicken farm, chicken farm, chicken farm, chicken farm, as far as the eye could see on both sides of the road. And they're complaining about chicken scratch prices going up. There's a huge problem with that. The feed prices is going up. And then when you're going to get to the meat side of it, you know, you talked about a couple bucks, $4 a pound. What if it goes to $6, $7 a pound? That's crazy. The easiest to raise, fastest to grow animal to put on the market, a chicken, and they're complaining about prices rising that fast. And these are major farmers. That's crazy. We're in uncharted territory, I do believe.
And it's really interesting is that we've been so used to on-demand everything that I think people are going to wake up to the fact that they're going to have to start planning a little bit more of their life. You know, I remember my wife still does it. And I remember growing up that my family would never let the gas tank get below half.
Never.
Because my father had to go to work and we couldn't, in case there was a shortage. You know what I mean? Or my dad didn't get enough hours and, you know, nobody went anywhere. So the car could always remain so my dad could get to work. We always canned. We always froze food growing up. You know, I remember my grandmother, you know, we're German, you know, she would be machen Sie die Lichter zu, basically make the lights out, you know, turn off all the lights. If she put the air conditioner on in the house, she had black over curtains over all the windows. The house looked like a mausoleum because she didn't want 1 inch of the cold to get out of the house. And I think we lost that kind of thriftiness. And I think those are the things that I think will be imposed back upon all of us on a go-forward basis. You know, hey, you need to plan. You know, I always overbuy a little bit at the store to put up. Doubled my garden this year in my yard. In fact, right now, I live in Southern California, so I went ahead and I just harvested my potatoes in July, and I put in a sweet corn crop that I'll be able to harvest at the end of September, and I put pumpkins in that I'll be able to harvest the 1st of November. You know, you can't do that anywhere else. You can put those in the ground till August 15th here, Dave. And we just went ahead and I don't know how many bushels of peaches we pulled off. I don't freeze those so much because they're too watery or can them, but we turn them into jam and jelly. And now my apple trees are coming off. And, you know, it doesn't take much to do these here. And in my neighborhood, we're swapping, you know. I got, you know, one neighbor that says boatloads of tomatoes. We have boatloads of fruit. You just switch. And people need to start doing that. And maybe we should talk about a show, even though we don't really trade geniuses too much, But absolutely, you can take a closet in your garage. The pot growers have taught us how to grow inside the home. And you can grow all your salad stuff inside an area as big as a refrigerator.
Absolutely. Those lettuces are super easy to grow, and they're continuous too. You just trim them and they keep growing back. But I will say one thing about, keeping the car full, because a lot of people are always like, well, I want to have some fuel storage. If you fill your car up continuously, you're rolling with 30 gallons as a fuel source. You'd need 6 5-gallon containers in your garage, 6 of those 5-gallon gas cans to fill up what's in your car. So when people say, hey, I want to keep some petrol on the side, just think of your car as a large storage tank that you can roll with anywhere you want to go. So keep it topped up. I do. I rarely let mine get below 3/4 if I can help it.
Yeah, I don't go anywhere. I work out of our house. That's the other thing too. I'll give you a trade I did today. I closed it today. They started talking about lockdowns. I bought Zoom. I made $4,300 on the trade. Another one of my subscribers made $5,000. Just because that's one thing that we do at Trade Genius is that we're watching this stuff all the time. And we saw money start to flow into Zoom. And so those are the kind of things that, we can help people uncover and move forward with. Just give people one ahead of time. We can talk about it next month to see if I was right or not. We're about ready. Alibaba is starting to climb back from this China, because Alibaba is basically the Amazon.com for business people. My brother-in-law buys everything on Alibaba to run his business. Stuff he can't get in the U.S., he buys in China. Alibaba is kind of like the eBay for business. And that's going to start moving here soon too. And the other one that you want to make sure you have is UU, because not only are they American producer of uranium, but they're an American producer of rare earth metals. Over time, this company is going to do extremely well. It's already doubled out of its base. And I think people are going to find out really quickly here with the way the weather works is that they're not going to be able to rely on solar and wind. And you're going to see a big push back into nuclear power. Uranium is already at a deficit, and there's no futures market in it. So you really can't manipulate it like you can gold and silver. And prices are going to go up there too. So you're going to want to get your hands on those things. And when things get really cold, the electricity is on demand. You won't have a Texas freeze. And like I said, it's as clean as energy as you're going to get. And if you're like the French, they know how to reprocess spent fuel so they can just keep using it again and again and again. So those are the areas which, if you're trading, what I'm trading is that's what you want to own. And then also, actually even owning grocery stores in this environment are a good bet. And look at Kroger, okay? Look at Safeway. They're just constantly grinding higher. And if you're worried about double-digit food growth, well, buy a grocery store because they're going to outproduce the inflation of your groceries, and they pay a dividend. These are areas in which you need to think about and to focus on, in terms of staying ahead of this inflation genie. From a food standpoint, obviously, if it's from a land standpoint, there is a company out there. It's called Farmland Partners, FPI. This is a company that owns farmland. And so if you can't buy your own farm, you want to own something that's probably going to get very dear in price over time. There's a reason why billionaires are buying farmland, because they know exactly what's happening. That's another area in which you can take advantage of. And then if you look at seed, I talked about this before in your show. Seed is now sitting up for another probably double here. It bottomed out just a month ago at $7. It's now up to $12.15, and the high it did just 6 months ago was at $26. This is a hybridizer of seed, and I think especially in the oil seeds area, it's something you definitely need to own. The company called Yield 10 Bioscience do genetically modified food. And when people are starving, they're going to probably forget that they're eating genetically modified food, even though obviously avoid it if you can, but you're not going to be able to feed 8 billion people on organic crops. To conclude here too, if I can make a pitch for Trade Genius, come check us out. We do great for people that join our service. We have a special running right now till Saturday. TradeLikeAGenius.com. We bundle stocks, we bundle crypto, and cryptos are making this move. I just did an 8% trade on Chainlink, and Dave gets our signals on crypto, so he knows how good they are. And yeah, you'll like trading. So if you don't want anything that's bundled, unbundled, you can get 40% off. Use promo code SUMMER. So we're watching. We have an algo that just tells us when money's moving into things. There's always an opportunity out there, regardless of what happens in the market.
Always. And I'll leave that link in the description box below. You can reach out and you can find some outlier events like Haryana in India where the earth uplifted. Now, see, if that would have been under a railroad track or under a highway, you would have seen an instant splitting of infrastructure. So as you're looking forward out into the landscape of news, don't be just focused on, the next passport thing or the next this to go into a restaurant. Broaden your horizon and scope of looking at what the extremes in the weather are doing from around the planet. And it'll give you a good gauge and indication on which countries are losing crops, which countries are seeing anomalies, and how much they import. And then you can start to do the Rubik's Cube like Bob does every month.
Yeah, and you'll make money.
That's an important thing because, kidding aside, we all need money. And the more things are going to cost and the more inavailability is, the persons who have money will be the ones who can get that. And I was thinking outside the box. Like, we went up to this place called Home Goods the other day, and they had these giant mason jars. They're like 1.5 gallon mason jars, but they were $4.50, and one was $5.99. It was a 2 gallon jar, mason jar, snap tight, snug lid. Most people are going to go, I'm not going to spend $6 on a jar. I'm not going to spend $5 on a jar, but I see the value in that. So I had the money to be able to go, all right, I will spend $6 on a jar. Now you might laugh and go, oh, he's talking about $6, but walking into a store, you would be surprised how many people would walk by that such crazy necessity item that when you try to buy canning jars right now, the only thing you're left with are those little tiny ones that you can do jams with. It's very difficult to find anything of any size for food storage or canning itself. So, finding a gem like this, thinking outside the box on ways to store food, and then companies that are providing these different implements so you can store food and preserve food and keep food fresh for a longer time. One of our refrigerators broke 3 months and we're still waiting for the replacement, even though it was already ordered and paid for. Things are breaking down. So being able to make money during this tumultuous time is going to be a plus.
Yeah, just so you know, if you buy a 32-ounce ball canning jar right now, it costs you $16. So you already made money on your trade.
Nice. Yeah, these are mason jars, straight up craft storage jars that have that, see-through rubber gasket there, and then they snap down and you can open them back and forth. So they're not screw-offs, they're that snap-down lid type.
Yeah, so pretty expensive.
Again, thanks for listening to what we have to say.
Thank you.